The Indomitable drifted silently into the galactic void, its hull gleaming with a sharp, cold reflection of the stars. It was an imposing sight, half a mile long, with a silhouette that seemed to cut through the darkness of space like a blade. Its presence alone sent a ripple through the fabric of the galaxy, though no one could have predicted how deeply that ripple would spread. The Galactic Council, a governing body composed of the oldest and most powerful species in the universe, had never once considered the possibility that such an insignificant backward planet like Earth would ever rise to challenge them. Earth had long been a place of little interest, an isolated world on the fringes of the known galaxy. Despite the humans' remarkable history of survival against overwhelming odds, the galaxy's elite were quick to dismiss them as just another primitive species, no more capable of wielding power than any other species in their early stages of development. But they were wrong. The Indomitable was a symbol of human ingenuity, born from a world that had long been accustomed to struggling, adapting, and fighting for survival. Earth had been shaped by conflict and adversity, and the humans who had built the Indomitable were not the type to bow to the will of those who assumed their superiority. They would prove that the galaxy had made a grave mistake in ignoring them. The ship's arrival on the outskirts of the neutral space station known as Astra 9 was anything but subtle. Its vast bulk was enough to fill the horizon, casting a long shadow over the station's hull. Astra 9 was a trading hub that hosted diplomats, merchants, and travelers from all over the galaxy, a place of bustling activity, but also a symbol of the status quo, where the strongest and oldest species dictated the rules. As soon as the Indomitable entered Astra 9's orbit, the station's defense systems buzzed to life, sending out rapid communications to the nearest military fleets. Captain Elena Harper stood at the command deck, her fingers hovering over the controls as the galaxy's oldest and most powerful species began to take notice. She knew what they would think. The humans were a threat, a distraction, or worse, a mistake. But the Indomitable was not here to start a war. She was here to send a message. A soft ping echoed through the deck as the first transmission came through. It was from the Galactic Council, though it was not exactly a welcoming message. The voice on the other end was cold, clipped, and filled with an air of condescension. "You are trespassing in neutral space," the voice said, echoing through the command room. "Identify yourself." Harper took a steady breath, her face impassive as she stepped forward to the communication terminal. Her crew, a mix of humans and alien allies who had signed on to this mission, watched her intently. They knew what was at stake. The future of Earth's place in the galaxy was about to unfold. "This is Captain Elena Harper of the Earth battleship Indomitable," she said, her voice unwavering. "We come in peace, but we are prepared to defend ourselves if necessary." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. For the first time, Earth's presence had been acknowledged by the galactic powers, not as a curiosity, but as something more, something worthy of notice. Still, the skepticism was palpable. "You come in peace," the voice from the council sounded almost amused. "And you believe your ship can stand against the might of the galactic empires? Earth is but a speck in the vastness of the stars. You have no place here." Harper's eyes narrowed, but she remained calm. "We've earned our place," she said, and the transmission cut off abruptly. The Indomitable was now officially on the radar. Whether the galaxy was ready or not, Earth was no longer a forgotten planet. It was a force to be reckoned with. As the transmission ended, a low murmur of disbelief rippled through the crew. They had expected resistance, but the venom in the response was far worse than anticipated. Still, Captain Harper was resolute. They had made the first step toward their goal, and no matter what the Council thought, humanity would carve its name into the galaxy. Her voice rang out, sharp and confident, as she turned to her crew. "Prepare for the next phase. We're here to stay. The galaxy will know we exist." But little did they know, the true challenge was just beginning. The Council, enraged by the audacity of a species they deemed insignificant, was already plotting their next move. Earth's battleship had sent shockwaves across the stars. But the full force of those tremors had yet to be felt. The humans aboard the Indomitable knew that their journey wasn't just about surviving the unknown. It was about proving they deserved a place in a galaxy that had already written them off as insignificant. Earth, a planet battered by centuries of conflict, had always been on the edge of annihilation. But it was exactly that relentless fight for survival that forged humanity's true strength. The crew, led by Captain Elena Harper, was composed of warriors, scientists, engineers, and diplomats, each with a singular drive: to show the galaxy that Earth would not be silenced. The Indomitable was humanity's testament to their enduring spirit, and they would make sure the stars knew it. The ship itself was a marvel of human engineering, constructed over 2 decades of near-constant war preparation. Earth had once been a divided world, torn by internal strife, but when the shadows of galactic powers began to loom over them, humanity united. They poured every resource into building a vessel capable of standing up to the most advanced species in the galaxy. The Indomitable was more than just a ship. It was a living symbol of human resilience, a message to the cosmos that Earth, though young and untested, would never back down. As Captain Harper walked through the corridors of the ship, she couldn't help but reflect on the arduous journey that had led them to this moment. The road had not been easy. For decades, Earth had been caught in wars, against itself, then against the greater unknowns of space. The first steps into the cosmos were rocky, and every victory was hard-won. The ship was a patchwork of experimental technology, scavenged alien relics, and the brilliant innovations of Earth's finest minds. It wasn't sleek like the ships of the galactic empires, nor did it have the cutting-edge weaponry that had made other species dominant. But it had something far more dangerous: a relentless determination. Humanity's strength had always been in their ability to innovate under pressure. On Earth, the most dangerous situations were often the ones that sparked humanity's greatest moments of brilliance. Against all odds, they had developed the Indomitable, a vessel equipped with weapons designed to strike where the galaxy least expected it, on every level, from the tactical to the personal. The ship wasn't just a weapon. It was a beacon of hope for those who might one day stand with Earth in the face of oppression. The crew wasn't just fighting for Earth's survival. They were fighting for the future of every species who had ever been underestimated. Earth had lived through war and catastrophe, yet it remained standing, stronger than ever. Now, as the Indomitable prepared to face the greatest test of its existence, Captain Harper couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was about to transform them in ways they could never predict. Yet, even as they prepared for what was to come, Earth's greatest adversary was still the galaxy's own dismissive attitude toward them. The Galactic Council's indifference had shifted to outright disdain. Behind closed doors, whispers about Earth's battleship circulated. "They're nothing more than a distraction," said one member of the council. "A flash in the pan. They'll burn out before they even make a real impact." But those who dismissed Earth didn't understand the one thing that set humans apart: their ability to adapt, to evolve, and to endure. And the Indomitable would show them that strength. As the ship ventured deeper into uncharted space, it was clear that the journey was no longer just about Earth's defense. Humanity was going to be tested, not just on the battlefield, but in every way imaginable. But what the galaxy didn't know yet was that Earth's greatest weapon wasn't its technology or the firepower of its battleship. It was the unyielding spirit of the people aboard it. Captain Harper stood on the bridge, her eyes locked on the vast stretch of stars ahead. She knew what was coming. The galaxy was on the brink of learning something that would change everything. Earth wasn't just a planet, it was a force, and the Indomitable was only the beginning. As the crew prepared for their first real test, Harper couldn't help but feel the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders. But she would not falter. "Hold fast," she said, her voice steady. "We are about to show them who we are." The Indomitable hovered just outside the largest neutral space station in the sector, Astra 9. The station was a hub for galactic diplomacy, its massive docking bays always filled with ships from the most powerful empires in the galaxy. The station was meant to be a neutral ground, a place where politics, trade, and alliances were forged. But as Earth's battleship loomed closer, the first signs of tension rippled through the station's many inhabitants. Captain Elena Harper stood at the command console, her eyes fixed on the view of Astra 9 as it grew ever closer on the monitors. The space station looked like any other, gleaming, massive, a symbol of the galaxy's stability. Yet beneath its polished exterior, Harper could feel the palpable sense of unease. The humans aboard the Indomitable had come in peace, but they were about to find out how difficult it would be to convince a galaxy that had long considered them beneath notice. As they initiated docking procedures, a cold transmission from the Galactic Council came through. The message was curt, dismissive. "Your presence here is unauthorized. You are advised to leave immediately." Harper didn't flinch. The Indomitable had already taken this step, and no one could turn them back now. "It's time," she muttered under her breath. Turning to her communications officer, she instructed, "Open a channel to the Council. I'm going to speak with them." The moment the connection was established, Captain Harper's calm voice filled the room. "This is Captain Elena Harper of the Indomitable, representing Earth. We come not as enemies, but as equals, hoping to introduce ourselves to the galaxy. We seek to form peaceful alliances, not to conquer." The response was immediate and icy. "You come in peace." The voice of the Council's speaker, a Xylarian known for his sharp wit and condescension, echoed through the comms. "How quaint. Your species is no more than a footnote in galactic history. What could you possibly offer? Your ship is a relic of a primitive world. You are wasting our time." The words stung, but Harper didn't flinch. She knew the galaxy had underestimated Earth's potential, but she had no intention of allowing that to be the defining factor of their encounter. "We have much to offer," she replied, her tone unwavering. "The galaxy has never seen what humans are capable of. We'll prove that by our actions, not our words." There was a silence on the other end, then a low laugh. "Very well," the Council speaker said. "We shall give you a chance to prove your worth. But be warned, we do not suffer fools lightly." With that, the transmission cut off. Earth had just been dismissed, once again, as a nuisance, one that the Council would tolerate only long enough to entertain. What they didn't know was that this dismissive arrogance was precisely the mistake that would come to haunt them. An hour later, as the crew prepared for their first official engagement with the galactic powers, a new challenge arose. The Xylarian speaker wasn't the only one who had underestimated humanity's resolve. A rogue faction of the Council, led by a warlord known as Korath, had taken matters into their own hands. Korath, who was notorious for his love of war and domination, had issued a challenge, a series of tests to be administered to the Indomitable and its crew. These tests would range from military prowess to diplomacy, all designed to humiliate the humans and demonstrate their inadequacy. Korath's challenge was clear: prove you belong, or leave the galaxy in disgrace. Captain Harper was not one to back down. She understood the stakes. This was their moment to show the galaxy that humanity wasn't just a curiosity. They were a force that couldn't be dismissed. However, the tests were more than just a mere humiliation. Korath's true intent was to expose humanity's weaknesses. He believed the humans were ill-prepared for the intricate political games of the galaxy, and their military technology was no match for his own fleet. He was certain the Indomitable would fail. But what Korath failed to account for was the one thing that made humanity unique: their ability to think on their feet and adapt. Earth's forces may not have the ancient knowledge or the polished fleets of the galactic powers, but they had an edge: creativity born from necessity, and the will to never give up. Captain Harper knew that these tests would be just another battlefield, and she would make sure Earth would rise to meet it, no matter the cost. As the crew prepared for the first test, the Indomitable's engines hummed, the tension thick in the air. The warlord Korath's challenge was just the beginning. The Council had made a mistake in underestimating them. And now, The galaxy would have to face the consequences. The first test came swiftly. Korath, ever the cynic, had designed it to expose the humans' lack of understanding of galactic warfare. It was a straightforward challenge, a mock battle against a fleet of his most seasoned commanders. The Indomitable and its crew were to engage in a simulated conflict in an empty star system, one that allowed for full use of weapons, but with no risk of actual casualties. But Korath made a critical mistake in underestimating Earth's most formidable trait: their resourcefulness. To him, the Indomitable was little more than a primitive warship with outdated technology. The fleet of warships he had assembled was a true display of military might, superior firepower, cutting-edge technology, and tactics honed over centuries. The humans, with their inferior ships and seemingly primitive technology, had no hope of victory. Or so he thought. Captain Harper stood at the command bridge of the Indomitable, her gaze fixed on the distant fleet forming at the other end of the system. Her mind raced through the possibilities, the countless ways they could exploit the situation. This wasn't just about brute strength. It was about strategy, cunning, and taking the enemy by surprise. Earth had no choice but to think outside the box. If they played by the rules of the galaxy's traditional warfare, they would lose. "Report," Harper said, her voice calm, but edged with purpose. "Enemy fleet consists of 6 advanced battlecruisers, 5 destroyers, and several support ships," Lieutenant Torres, the tactical officer, replied. "They're heavily armed and preparing for full engagement." "Good," Harper nodded. "Prepare to engage, but not in the way they expect." As the enemy fleet moved into position, ready for the conflict to begin, Captain Harper issued an order that sent a ripple of confusion through the crew. "Activate all cloaking systems." The Indomitable's cloaking system was a prototype, an experimental piece of technology that Earth had adapted from an ancient alien relic. It wasn't perfect, and it certainly wasn't something that the fleet had trained for. But it was enough to turn the tide. With the flick of a switch, the Indomitable disappeared from the sensors, its massive form vanishing into the blackness of space. Korath's fleet remained stationary, confused. They had been expecting the humans to make a direct assault, to charge into battle with all their might, just as any other species would. But the Indomitable was nowhere to be found. "What is this trickery?" Korath's voice crackled through the comms, laced with annoyance. "Find them. Track their movements." But the humans weren't running. They were setting their trap. With the fleet momentarily disoriented, the Indomitable began to move, not toward the enemy, but in erratic, unpredictable patterns. Their course was impossible to track, and Korath's fleet struggled to keep up with the shifting movements. Earth's warship wasn't trying to engage in a head-on battle. Instead, it was leading the enemy fleet toward a planet-sized asteroid belt, a chaotic mass of rocks and debris that was normally avoided due to the difficulty of navigating through it. The Indomitable was using the belt as cover, maneuvering its way through the treacherous terrain with surprising agility, its cloaking device making it nearly impossible to detect. The enemy fleet, slow to react, followed in pursuit, unaware that they were walking into a trap. As they entered the asteroid field, the Indomitable struck. The cloaking system powered down briefly, revealing the ship in all its might, and the crew unleashed a barrage of missiles designed not to destroy, but to disable. The asteroid field was their ally now, a shield that shielded the humans from the enemy's retaliatory strikes. Within minutes, Korath's flagship was crippled, its shields failing under the unexpected barrage. The destroyers and support ships were caught in a deadly crossfire between the asteroids, while the advanced battlecruisers struggled to adjust their fire. "This isn't possible." Korath's voice crackled in disbelief. "How can they?" But it was too late. The Indomitable had already used its superior understanding of terrain and tactics to outmaneuver Korath's fleet. The result was clear: a victory for Earth, earned not through firepower, but through brains and ingenuity. Captain Harper stood tall as the reports came in from the tactical crew. The fleet had been decimated, several ships disabled, and forced to retreat, their weapons systems inoperative. The Indomitable had not only survived, but triumphed against what was supposed to be a hopeless challenge. As Korath's fleet limped away, humiliated and battered, the humans aboard the Indomitable couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. They hadn't just won a battle. They had shown the galaxy that they were a force to be reckoned with. In that moment, Captain Harper turned to her crew, her voice strong and resolute. "We didn't just win today. We've sent a message. The galaxy has underestimated us once, but they won't make that mistake again." Across the bridge, the crew exchanged looks of relief and victory, but Harper knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy had seen Earth's brilliance for the first time, but they would soon learn that Earth's brilliance wasn't just in its ingenuity, it was in its unbreakable will to survive. The victory over Korath's fleet sent ripples across the galaxy, but the humans aboard the Indomitable knew it was only the beginning of a much larger struggle. Their success in the asteroid field had proven that Earth was capable of outsmarting its more advanced adversaries, but it had also painted a target on their backs. The Galactic Council, along with its many factions, had underestimated humanity, and now they were determined not to make the same mistake twice. The Indomitable's crew had been elated, but the euphoria of the victory was short-lived. On the heels of the battle, a new, far more dangerous enemy emerged. As Captain Harper stood at the command deck, watching the stars beyond, a tense silence filled the room. The Indomitable had only just begun to recover from the fight when a new fleet appeared on their radar. "Captain," said Lieutenant Torres, his voice taut with urgency, "we have an incoming fleet, multiple ships, and they're not from Korath's faction." Harper's mind raced. "Who are they?" "Unknown, but they're massive. It looks like they're preparing for an attack." The fleet that had appeared out of nowhere was like nothing Earth had encountered before. The ships were sleek and menacing, with designs that clearly suggested they were built for destruction. Their advanced weapon systems were more sophisticated than anything Korath had deployed. As the ships neared, their symbols and markings, previously unrecognized by the crew, became clear. "They're from the Xylarian Dominion," Torres added grimly. "The same faction we've already angered. They must have sent their best to deal with us." Harper clenched her fists, feeling the weight of the situation. The Xylarian Dominion was one of the oldest and most powerful forces in the galaxy, with a reputation for ruthlessness. If Korath had been bad, the Xylarian Dominion would be far worse. The humans had already proved their worth by defeating his fleet, but now they were about to face the full might of one of the galaxy's greatest powers. As the Xylarian ships closed in, a transmission came through from the leading vessel. The voice that echoed over the comm was unmistakable, cold, calculating, and filled with an air of superiority. "This is Admiral Rakash of the Xylarian Dominion. You have dared to defy the Galactic Council, and now face the consequences of your insolence. Surrender your ship and leave our space, or be destroyed." The crew braced themselves for the inevitable onslaught, but Captain Harper's voice cut through the tension with surprising calmness. "Admiral Rakesh, we are not here to surrender. We've shown you what we are capable of, and we won't back down." There was a pause on the other end, then a low, mocking laugh. "You think your ship can stand against the might of the Xylarian Dominion? Your victory over Korath was a fluke, a lucky strike, but that will not save you now." The transmission ended abruptly, and without warning, the Xylarian fleet unleashed a wave of energy blasts toward the Indomitable. Harper's heart pounded as the crew scrambled to respond, but she knew that the Xylarian ships had the advantage in sheer firepower. The time for clever tactics was over. They were about to be thrust into a battle where they would need to outblast and outthink the enemy, or face destruction. "Brace for impact," Harper ordered, her voice steady despite the danger. "Activate all shields. Return fire with everything we've got." The Indomitable's engines roared as the crew powered up the ship's weapon systems. The massive cannons, still reeling from the previous battle, hummed to life. A few seconds later, The ship shuddered violently as the first barrage of Stylarian fire hit the shields, the force of the impact rattling everyone on board. "Shields holding at 40%, reported Lieutenant Torres, his voice strained. "The energy blasts are intense. They're adapting quickly." Harper didn't flinch. She knew this was their test. The victory over Korath had only shown a small glimpse of what they could do. The Indomitable had proven its worth once, but now, the galaxy's greatest power was coming to make sure they paid for their audacity. And if they had any hope of survival, they would have to dig deeper into their human ingenuity than ever before. "We're not backing down," Harper muttered under her breath, eyes fixed on the Stylarian ships closing in. "They think we're just a fluke. Let's show them what humanity is truly made of." With that, the crew of the Indomitable sprang into action, ready to engage the Stylarian fleet with everything they had left. The odds were impossible, but humanity had never been one to play by the rules. They had already overcome impossible odds before, and now, with the stakes higher than ever, they would fight, not just for their survival, but for the future of Earth among the stars. The Indomitable rocked under the intense barrage from the Stylarian fleet. The energy blasts seemed endless, each one pushing the shields to their breaking point. On the command bridge, the crew worked with fierce determination, eyes fixed on their consoles as they fought to keep the ship intact. "Shields down to 15%. Lieutenant Torres shouted, sweat trickling down his forehead as his hands flew over the controls. "We can't take much more of this." Captain Harper's jaw tightened. The Stylarian fleet was relentless, their weapons cutting through space with terrifying precision. But Harper knew one thing that the Stylarian admiral clearly didn't. Earth's crew had something the Stylarian Dominion could never replicate, an unyielding will to survive. If they were going to make it through this, it wasn't going to be with firepower alone. It was going to take everything they had, every scrap of ingenuity, every ounce of courage. "Is the cloaking system functional?" Harper asked, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Barely," said Lieutenant Torres, eyes darting to the systems, then back to the console. "It's been damaged in the previous battle, but it's still operational, barely." Harper didn't hesitate. "Activate it. Now." The crew worked quickly, activating the weakened cloaking system as the ship shuddered again from another direct hit. The Indomitable flickered and vanished from the Stylarian fleet's sensors, leaving the massive ships to search frantically for a target. Silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the sounds of the crew's hurried movements. "We've lost visual contact with the enemy," Lieutenant Torres reported, his voice full of urgency. "But they're still probing for us. They won't stop until they find us." Harper stood motionless, her mind racing. The cloaking system had bought them a few precious moments, but it wouldn't be enough to win this fight. The Stylarian fleet had them cornered, and even if they couldn't detect the Indomitable immediately, it wouldn't be long before they figured out where the ship was hiding. But Captain Harper had one final plan in mind. It was a dangerous move, perhaps the most dangerous move Earth had ever attempted. But it might just give them a fighting chance. "Lieutenant, plot a course through the asteroid field again," she ordered. "This time, we're not just hiding. We're going to lead them into a trap." Torres blinked. "A trap, Captain. They'll have no trouble following us through that debris field." Harper gave him a determined look. "That's exactly the point. They think we're hiding. But what if we lure them into the asteroid field, turn the tables, and ambush them from a position they won't expect?" The crew's eyes widened. The idea was bold, risky, and nearly suicidal. But the captain's resolve was unshakable, and the crew, trained under her leadership, knew that to survive in this galaxy, sometimes the most audacious plans were the only ones that would work. "Do it," Harper said firmly. "And make sure the cloaking system is synchronized with our course change. We'll slip through their search grid and position ourselves in the perfect place for an attack." As the crew carried out the orders, the tension on the bridge was almost unbearable. Harper didn't have a plan B. If this didn't work, The Indomitable would be reduced to scrap metal, and humanity's journey in the stars would end before it had truly begun. But she had faith in her crew, and in the resilience of Earth. With the Indomitable cloaked once more, the ship entered the asteroid field, drifting silently among the massive chunks of rock. The Xylarian fleet followed suit, unknowingly marching straight into the trap. Harper gave the order to drop the cloaking shield just as they reached the heart of the asteroid belt. The ship's weapons powered up in an instant. The Xylarian fleet was now trapped in a maze of asteroids, their ships unable to move freely in the chaotic environment. Now, Harper barked, and the Indomitable unleashed a devastating wave of firepower. The Xylarian ships, caught off guard by the sudden onslaught, were thrown into disarray. The once pristine fleet was now embroiled in a chaotic, deadly struggle as the Indomitable picked them off one by one, using the terrain to its advantage. For the first time, the Xylarian fleet realized what they were up against. Earth wasn't going to roll over. The humans weren't relying on brute strength or numbers. They were relying on something far more dangerous: their ability to think, adapt, and fight with everything they had. Admiral Rakash's voice came through the comms, strained and filled with fury. "This will not end here. Humans, you will regret this." Harper's face remained stoic as she monitored the battle. The tide had turned, but she knew this fight was far from over. The Indomitable was winning, but the galaxy would not forgive Earth's defiance easily. It was only a matter of time before the Xylarian Dominion sent more forces. But for now, the Indomitable had won. "Keep pushing," Harper said, her voice steady, almost calm. "We're not done yet." And as the Indomitable's cannons roared to life once again, it was clear to the galaxy that humanity's fight for survival had only just begun. The Indomitable's victory over the Xylarian fleet reverberated through the galaxy. The once proud and untouchable Xylarian Dominion had been dealt a humiliating blow, but that victory came with its own price. As Captain Harper and her crew reveled in the aftermath, they knew that their enemies would not take this defeat lightly. Admiral Rakash's fleet had retreated, battered and broken, but Earth's success had only ignited the flames of resentment across the galaxy. The news spread like wildfire. Political leaders, military commanders, and warlords from all corners of the known universe were beginning to rally, their eyes fixed on Earth and its audacious new power. Captain Harper stood before the holographic map on the command bridge, staring at the blinking red markers that indicated approaching fleets. The battle with the Xylarian Dominion was far from over. The Indomitable had survived, but it was only a matter of time before the Dominion sent reinforcements, stronger, more determined forces, and perhaps others who would join in to crush the humans once and for all. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres spoke up, his voice tense. "We've detected multiple fleets converging from several different sectors. It's a coordinated attack, and it's coming straight for us." Harper's eyes narrowed. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her shoulders. This wasn't just about Earth's survival anymore. It was about standing tall in the face of a galaxy that now considered them a threat. Humanity had become the spark that would ignite an all-out conflict. The Dominion, though embarrassed by their defeat, were only the first to act. The next few days would decide Earth's future. "Can we identify the fleets?" Harper asked, keeping her voice steady despite the looming threat. "Yes, Captain. There's a fleet of Trelvian warships from the Outer Rim, heavy artillery, advanced tracking systems. They're known for their no-mercy approach. Along with them, a contingent from the Harkin Alliance is heading our way. They've always been eager to prove themselves, and after our confrontation with the Xylarian Dominion, they'll be looking for blood." "Great," Harper muttered. The Harkin Alliance was notorious for their brutal tactics, and the Trelvians weren't far behind. This wasn't a random collection of warships. It was a coalition of forces, all intent on wiping Earth from existence. Harper knew their options were limited. They could either try to run, flee into the deep unknown of the galaxy, or stand their ground and face what was coming. "We don't run," she said finally, her voice unyielding. We prepare for the worst and do what we always do. We fight. Torres gave her a sharp look. But, Captain, we're outnumbered. This is a coalition of some of the most formidable forces in the galaxy. If they hit us all at once. I know the odds, Harper interrupted, her voice firm. But we've survived worse. We've got the advantage of surprise. We'll hit them where they're weakest. Get our fighters ready and prepare for evasive maneuvers. This time, we don't engage in an open battle. We outsmart them. The crew moved quickly, each person falling into their assigned roles. In the days that followed, the Indomitable became a flurry of activity as they prepared for the coming storm. Earth's only hope rested on their ability to use strategy and cunning to turn the tide once more. The Trelvian fleet and the Harken forces would arrive within hours. Harper's plan was risky, but it was their only chance. The Indomitable would have to strike first, not with brute force, but with speed and precision. They would split the enemy forces, forcing them to fight on multiple fronts and create chaos within their ranks. Earth's enemies had made one critical mistake. They underestimated humanity's ingenuity. As the hours ticked by, the crew of the Indomitable grew anxious, but the resolve was unwavering. The ship's crew had fought together through impossible odds before, and they would do so again. Every person aboard knew the stakes. This was more than a fight for survival. It was a fight for the very future of Earth in a galaxy that viewed them as insignificant. The final briefing before the battle began. Harper stood before her crew, every face in the room filled with determination. We may be outnumbered, and we may be surrounded, but we have one advantage they don't. Each other. We fight for Earth, for our people, and for everything we've worked for. We do not surrender. A low murmur of agreement echoed through the room. Harper's eyes swept over her crew one last time. There were no fears on their faces, only the grim understanding that they would fight as one, no matter the cost. Let's show them what humanity is made of, Harper said. The Indomitable's engines roared to life as the crew prepared for the battle that would determine not only their fate, but also the fate of Earth among the stars. The enemy fleets were closing in, but so was humanity's resolve. It was no longer about survival. It was about sending a message to the galaxy that Earth would not be so easily erased. The Indomitable drifted through the void, her engines a soft hum beneath the deck as the crew prepared for the final confrontation. The enemy fleets were now within striking distance. Captain Harper stood in front of the command console, watching as the enemy forces approached, their ships massive and imposing against the backdrop of deep space. Trelvian warships led the front, sleek and deadly, their hulls designed for efficiency in battle. Behind them, the Harken Alliance ships flanked, their designs a chaotic blend of sheer brute force and unpredictable firepower. Harper's gaze was steely, unwavering. This was the moment she had prepared for. The Indomitable had already been through hell, and now, the crew would face the ultimate test of their survival. The stakes were higher than ever, not just their lives, but the fate of humanity among the stars. Lieutenant Torres, Harper began, her voice calm but full of authority. What's our status? Shields are holding at 80%, Captain, Torres replied, his face tense. All fighter squads are ready for launch. Weapons systems are fully powered. We're in position, but the enemy has us outnumbered 3-1. Harper nodded, her mind focused. The odds were astronomical, but it wasn't the first time they'd been up against impossible odds, and it wouldn't be the last. She had a plan, a risky one, but it was their best chance. Good, she said. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. When they engage, we split their forces. Don't give them a clear shot. We'll use the asteroid field as cover again. Force them into a three-dimensional fight. Let's make this as difficult as possible for them. The crew moved with precision, their training kicking in. Harper could feel the weight of the moment, but she didn't let it show. She wasn't just leading a ship. She was leading the hope of Earth, and they would not fall today. A series of red alerts flashed on the command screens. The enemy fleets had initiated their attack. The Trelvian warships surged forward, their weapon systems firing off in rapid succession, while the Harken Alliance ships began to position themselves for a full-on assault. "Now," Harper ordered, her voice sharp, "initiate evasive maneuvers, and let's hit them where they least expect it." The Indomitable sprang into action, its engines roaring to life as it shot toward the asteroid belt. As the ship banked and veered around massive asteroids, the crew quickly adapted to the chaotic environment. The Trelvian ships, known for their precision and speed, struggled to match the Indomitable's unpredictable movements, while the Harken ships were more clumsy, relying on brute force rather than finesse. But the real test came when the Indomitable came within striking distance of the enemy's flanks. "Deploy fighter squads," Harper commanded. The ship's fighter pilots, specially trained for high-risk combat, launched into the void. Their ships streaked across the battlefield, distracting the larger enemy vessels, drawing their fire, and providing valuable cover for the Indomitable as it continued its evasive maneuvers. For a few minutes, the battle was a blur of flashing lights and chaotic exchanges of fire. The Indomitable expertly danced around the asteroid field, forcing the enemy to overextend and make mistakes. Trelvian ships collided with debris, their shields failing as they tried to pursue the elusive human vessel. The Harken forces fared no better, with several ships caught in a crossfire between asteroids and human fighters. Then Harper saw it, an opening. The Trelvian flagship, a massive ship with nearly impenetrable armor, had strayed too far from the rest of its fleet. It was exposed, vulnerable. This was the moment. "Target the flagship," Harper barked. "All weapons, fire on my mark." The crew worked in synchrony, their focus razor-sharp, the Indomitable's weapons systems locked onto the Trelvian flagship, and the countdown began. 3, 2, 1, mark. A surge of energy rippled through the Indomitable as its main cannon fired, sending a beam of concentrated firepower straight into the heart of the Trelvian flagship. The impact was devastating. The flagship's shields cracked, and then its hull buckled under the force of the blast. The massive ship began to list to one side as explosions tore through its structure, sending debris into the void. The enemy fleet, stunned by the sudden loss of their flagship, faltered. They were disorganized, their morale shattered. This was the opening the Indomitable needed. "Push forward," Harper shouted. "Take them down. Target the enemy leadership." The Indomitable surged forward, its cannons roaring to life again as it struck the remaining Trelvian and Harken ships. The human fighters, emboldened by the destruction of the flagship, dove in alongside their mothership, swarming the remaining enemy vessels. The battle turned into a brutal close-quarter fight, but Earth's forces held their ground. In the end, the Indomitable and its crew emerged victorious, but not without cost. The enemy fleet had been decimated, but there were casualties, both in the battle and in the aftermath. The crew had been pushed to their limits, and Earth had shown the galaxy that it was not to be underestimated. Captain Harper stood at the bridge, surveying the wreckage of the battlefield. The Indomitable was battered, but it was still intact. The crew, weary but resolute, had achieved the impossible. "We did it," Torres said, his voice low with disbelief. Harper's gaze lingered on the stars beyond, where a new chapter for Earth was about to begin. The battle was won, but the war for Earth's place among the stars was far from over. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. But one thing was certain: Earth had proven that it was not just a backwater world, it was a force to be reckoned with. "We did," Harper said softly. "And this is just the beginning."